I'm Eva Oh, and this is the Teakink podcast. I've been a dominatrix since 2011, and I would like to spill the tea on my life. Thank you for listening.
Welcome to the Teakink podcast.
Thank you so much.
So nice to see you again.
I know, it's been a while.
Last time I saw you behind the desk of a sex shop.
That's right, with Bruce LaBruce signing.
Correct.
Thank you for coming.
Oh,
Did you like the book?
I did.
Yes.
I did. You gave me quite a few that day.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all quality. But let's introduce you. This is Matt?
Yes.
Matthew? Matt?
Matthew.
Matthew. And Matthew, I met because of a very wondrous thing called the Baron Prize. Matthew runs Baron.
Yes.
What is Baron?
So we're a publishing house, really. Mm-hmm. We started off as a zine back in 2013. And I think we produced like 4 issues of that. And then we did one book with Tyra Nabon, the photographer. And that was really successful. And I kind of wanted to make it into a business. So I spent a couple of years kind of developing it and thinking how it could go forward, because the magazine and zine world was sort of a bit collapsing. You know, I guess people weren't buying magazines so much. Mm-hmm. And I decided to make it into more of a book publishing house. And this year, actually, we're publishing 20 books. 20? Yes.
Is that a normal number?
It's gone up.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've pushed the number up to make it, you know, to get bigger, yeah.
Okay. And is this what you had in mind?
When I started Baron.
Yeah.
You know what, it was just a personal project, really. Mm-hmm. I think I started with another friend called Jonathan Baron, mm-hmm. And the publication's sort of named after him, mm-hmm. but it's not. At the same time, it was really about kind of being a porn baron. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't really, I really enjoyed it, and kept on creating publications and decided that that's what I wanted to perhaps go into.
So hang on, it was about being a porn baron.
What's the name? Yeah, so Jonathan, how it started actually was that I wanted to make a zine called Marie Claire as a Slut, and that was going to be a porn magazine.
Okay.
And then Jonathan was making his men's magazine called Baron Magazine. He was like, "Oh, will you work on that?" And I was like, "Yeah, will you work on Marie Claire as a Slut?" Mm-hmm. And then we decided to combine Marie Claire as a Slut with Baron, because I thought Baron was actually a great name. Mm-hmm. And so Marie Claire as a Slut became Baron. And I loved the name just because it has a sort of connotation with sex and a porn baron. Mm-hmm, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It feels regal on an initial thing.
I guess so, yeah.
You're coming from a different angle. So would you say that porn still features as an aspect of your thoughts around what you're going to publish, or?
So I would say that, yeah, we don't really make pornography. I would class it really as artists who want to explore sex and sexuality and make work around it. But, you know, I mean, obviously our publications are subjective, so it really depends on the reader. I mean, it could be pornography to a particular reader who wants to whack one off over one of our amazing books. Or you can find a really interesting conceptual book that has a lot of meaning and discover new ideas.
I would love to meet the people who are opening your books and jerking off to them.
Yeah.
I think they would be a more interesting lot. Tasteful. I wonder if they leave it in the pages. But how we met, it was the Baron Prize.
That's right. So we do the Baron Prize once a year. We're doing it at the moment, actually, and it's a prize that searches for artists, photographers, filmmakers, illustrators, anyone really making kind of visual-based work to make a project. And you submit one work about sex, sexuality, and you starred and collaborated in the winning film. Yes.
Why did you choose Grief Encounter?
Well, actually, I wasn't involved in the judging process. We had Richard Kern was one of the judges that year. He loved it, and I think we really enjoyed. Oh, Yushi Lee also who's one of our photographers that we published, was also a judge that year, and I think it was quite aligned with maybe Baron because it had a kind of sense of humor, and then also it was conceptual. That's really important. Submission criteria to the prize that needs to have meaning, and I think those were the kind of strengths of the project. Did you enjoy making it?
Yeah, I mean,
because I remember talking to you about it, and you were quite nervous about the screening.
Oh yeah, so I couldn't watch the first screening.
Yes,
I hid.
Yes, I remember.
But the second one I did fine, and now I can watch it on an IMAX screen. I'm fine.
Right.
It just was exposure therapy.
Right.
To seeing your crotch being watched by your friends up close. But the process of making it, I think I'd really trusted the writer and Ellen, so Kitty Drake and Ellen Pearson. And so I just made myself available.
Yes.
More than anything.
Yes.
And what came together was something, very special, I think.
Yeah.
So thank you for having us.
No, it was great.
But why sex and sexuality?
That's a good point. I think I've always been interested in sex from a very young age, and maybe when I reflect back, maybe that's been about sources that have inspired me. I can remember at sort of probably about 5 or 8 seeing the film Mona Lisa. Have you ever seen that with Bob Hoskins? It's about she's like the star of the film is Bob, and he is a taxi driver for a high-class escort. And she's on a search to find her girlfriend, who unfortunately is a heroin addict. And she, whilst working in, sort of 5-star hotels and visiting clients, on her days off, she's searching for her girlfriend, who unfortunately is a sex worker on the streets. It's set in the 80s. Well, it was made in the 80s. And so I always really loved the kind of central character in that, because she was so glamorous, amazing, and powerful. So I think that was one source when I reflect back that I really kind of enjoyed that. And thinking about other sources that have always been really attractive to powerful women, actually. So I think, and maybe thinking about this source now, maybe there's problems with it, but I really loved Alexis Colby and Dynasty and The Stud. I thought that those were great.
What did you like about these powerful women?
I liked, actually, it's quite interesting because I felt growing up, I always knew that I was gay, and I felt that in popular culture, kind of gay representation, when we were in the media, it was very much about, the HIV crisis, we were going to die. Or if we were in the media, we were very much comedy parts. We were there to be laughed at by heterosexuals. So I enjoyed these powerful women because often their characters would have men at their disposal and could speak to heterosexual men in quite a powerful and discerning way. And that's something I kind of looked up to. And maybe reflecting back, if there had been that sort of gay character in a TV program or in a film, they would have been amused too, yes.
And now that there are more options for us to look towards, do you still gravitate primarily to these images of, or these characters of powerful women, or are there representations of powerful gay men? Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that I'm effeminate. I would say I'm not hyper effeminate, and women sometimes can be, not making sweeping generalization, can be feminine. And I think there's quite a close relationship between the two.
Okay.
And so I can also, find muses and inspiration from gay men who are like that, and also women, because I think there's kind of like
so it's the femme perspective more than anything.
Yes.
And when it comes to, so you saw Mona Lisa.
Yes.
You've seen Dynasty.
Yes.
These characters are following you over time. Did you make something of that? Was it photography? Was it just keeping gravitating towards these characters? How did we get from Mona Lisa to Baron or to Marie Claire as a slut?
Yeah, so those were sources probably when I was like 8. And then in my teenage years, when I started to discover photography, I think one of my I guess it was my favorite source at the time of being a teenager was Miriam Zauner. Do you know his work? He did a lot of work about the cruising grounds in New York and the piers. And he did an amazing book about maybe the marginalized, such as the gay community or maybe people with disabilities, and it kind of documented them in New York. And I found that book really beautiful and it really resonated with me. And again, it was quite explicit and focused a lot on the male body and sex. So it was kind of a big inspiration. And I think from that book, at the time I was studying at Camberwell College of Art, I made a project about cottaging. And I went round with a girlfriend of mine. He had to wait outside the cottage while I went in and lured men to photograph them. So I made a kind of whole project.
What is cottaging?
So cottaging is a public toilet often is designed to look like a cottage in parks.
Okay.
And gay men go there to cruise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I made a project about that.
I'm imagining like a thatched roof.
Yes.
Okay, now I understand. It's a cruising spot.
Yeah. So you go there and you pick other men up and have sex with them in the toilet.
Okay.
Or you can be a bit of an exhibitionist, and if there's no one there, maybe do it quite publicly.
Okay.
So I made photography about that, project about cottaging. So I've always been making these projects about kind of sex and sexual subcultures,
Because maybe I don't know, I guess like, obviously I'm living in a space that's overt in terms of how sexuality is expressed, or at least it's more overt than average people are allowing for themselves, right? Do I think about how I got there? I think how I got there was mostly because, around me, I was lucky to be enough in spaces that allowed for it, decriminalized spaces, for example, in Australia. I was lucky to come from a family who didn't necessarily shut down on the topic.
Right.
We didn't talk about it directly, but there was a lot of an awareness of pleasure and comfort.
Right.
And not a lot of shame talked about.
Right.
Yeah, even though they were Catholic, strangely.
Yes, right.
Yeah. And so I think all of these things, including timing and where culture kind of brought me to a place where I was confident enough to explore things. But yeah, it's interesting to think about our journeys and how everything kind of aligns in order for us to create something. But, and the freedom to think that we can go cottaging.
Yes.
I guess, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that you were in an environment where here are these, I guess in a way you were, because if you're watching a movie, when you're quite young, it's quite an environment that maybe is more open to stories and to sharing within them?
Absolutely. I think, again, my parents have been quite liberal as well. I would say they're also quite prudish, so maybe quite English and Western, that maybe sex isn't such an open conversation, but I definitely was exposed to it through art and film and literature.
And it's almost like it's a nice balance of not talking about it that makes it intriguing. Sometimes I speak to the more heavy Catholic families, and they really enjoy the aspects of shame.
Right.
Yeah, and they bring that into their practice.
Right.
But it's almost like, what is the mix of prudish and liberal that we can access something and make it a part of our day, but also find it intriguing enough to reach towards, as opposed to something that's always there and who cares, maybe. So it was a good mix enough to make Baron come about. Thank you, 20 books a year later. But I last saw you behind that counter with
Yes.
Bruce LaBruce
Yes.
at a sex bookshop.
Yes.
Or it was actually, they were selling DVDs.
Yeah, I think their main business is actually selling poppers and Viagra, actually. And it's just, when I'd been there, that's what people were buying. Really,
So
yeah.
do they often do book launches?
I have never worked with that particular shop. I've
Yeah.
worked with quite a few in the area. As you know, they're all sort of closing down because people are really kind of buying
I mean, who owns a
everything.
DVD player?
Exactly. Yeah, we can stream online and also we can buy our dildos and poppers and things online. So I think those shops have sort of, their shelf life has kind of ended a bit.
Are there still cruising spots in Soho?
For gay men. So I don't know. I'm not like actively cruising, but there's an app called Squirt. And
so
if
we've
you're
moved on.
interested in cruising, you can look in different areas and find the cruising grounds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not an online cruising. It's like a map kind of
Yes,
version.
it shows you, so you can be in any city and log on to Squirt
Okay.
and find your cruising spot. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've still seen some saunas operating in Soho. But so why did you choose to do it at that shop or a shop in general?
Well, actually, I wanted to do it at a more of a gallery space, but I've done past book launches in sex shops, and it's always quite popular with people like going to them. It certainly is very aesthetic as an environment. I love them too. I think they've got a great aesthetic, and also they're closing down, so they're quite rare actually.
And how do you feel about that?
That they're closing down.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if I was running sex shops, excuse me, a sex shop today, maybe I would have to think about what I sold. Because in the past it was to buy maybe videos, DVDs, magazines, so you could see bodies.
Is that the next Baron project? If you were going to open a sex shop, what would it look like now?
So I thought about that. Do you go to sex shops actually?
I do, but it's mostly because like a last minute thing. I need to grab something.
Exactly. I would be the same. Maybe I want to get some lube or some poppers or something very quickly.
Or it's like an experience with a sub or something.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
And so it's a destination.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, Coco de Mer maybe is more of a kind of shopping experience. And so maybe it would be, if I was going to do one, it would definitely be a shopping experience. It would be, a beautiful store and have other objects there as well. And maybe, a lot of people, DVDs are coming back. I see Heaven, Marc Jacobs selling old DVD films.
Okay.
And so maybe, it would be nice to bring kind of older DVD porn films and VHSs like Debbie Does Dallas or something, and sell those as kind of collectible pieces.
And then sell the video player also.
Yes, exactly.
I wouldn't know where to plug it in. Do TVs have somewhere you can plug it in these days? I don't know. Anyway, that's another business. Yeah. I've always, because it's mostly gay men that get the cruising spots. Sadly for me, I'm always.
So would you go cruising?
I wonder if it's that rarity thing that has me a little bit upset and therefore hooked,
Right.
Because it's mostly, like in Pigalle, there's so many spots that you can just go to, but it's rare that they're going to let a woman into them.
Right.
And it's just the kitschness of the facades and just the inaccessibility, I think, for me, that maybe has me a little bit like devastated that I'm not allowed. But I've always thought, what would it be like if there was a queer cruising spot that was open?
Yeah.
How would it do? I guess I would go, but I don't know whether it would hold up. Whenever I go to more mixed spaces like Berghain, I'll try to use the dark room where I can, because it's not necessarily encouraged, but it's, welcomed enough, and it's dark enough anyway. So yeah, the physical versus the digital, right? You're talking about I'm so used to hearing about Grindr, but you're talking about Squirt, which is kind of like a hybrid.
Yeah, Squirt's much more fun.
Yeah. For the cottage enthusiast.
Yes.
Yeah, and then we think about the future of sex shops, and yeah, I guess I just wonder how much people are living in the physical and the digital. Maybe as somebody who hawks a very physical product, I mean, it's obviously in a good enough space that you can push out that many publications,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
I think books are quite interesting because they are collectible. They have usually, with most of our books, they have quite a high resale market, and we print quite limited edition books, so they often become more valuable. For example, Bruce's first edition of Death Book was on eBay for £1,000, and it was originally £30. So they do have kind of quite a good resale value and worth collecting. And I think, as well as learning from them and finding meaning from them, a lot of people use them as interiors. There's a lot of, Baron doesn't particularly do that, but there's a lot of publishers like Loose Joints or Mac Books who definitely make very interior friendly books that they look sort of lovely on your coffee table. They have muted colours that would kind of match your maybe Farrow and Ball walls.
Oh, are you ever going to maybe do one?
Do you know what? I would not. No. No, there's
That's
nothing.
not the focus.
No, it's not my focus. Actually, in the publishing world, I would say it's quite interesting when you go to the book fairs. And I'm seeing a little bit of change within publishing, but there is a tendency that all the publishing houses, the content of the work, and it might be conceptually quite different, tend to look the same. And I would say that maybe they're making work that is about the kind of politics of taste. And I was saying within the politics of taste, maybe masculinity is favoured more. So you would see that books in kind of more masculine colours. And when you go to the book fairs, I would say that Baron really is the only one who is publishing books that kind of celebrate the sexual politics of taste. We have books by Alice Hawken that are bright pink, or Sarah Baker that looks like a sort of Jackie Collins novel. I think we have quite a sort of distinct position within that publishing sphere that really isn't masculine and isn't that sort of interior friendly.
Yeah.
So
I love how much of those early influences and the thread has come out into your work. It's very cohesive.
Yeah, it's true. So the Sarah Baker project, Sarah Baker's a performance artist, and she and I had quite a lot of common because she'd also been quite excited by Jackie Collins and Jane Collins growing up. And as an artist, her work primarily focuses on the sexual politics of taste and class and being a woman. And so we were quite interested in making a Jackie Collins inspired project where it wasn't just a fiction book, that it was also visualized, and that she's always in her work, so she performs her work. She is a performance artist. And to create that project, required quite a lot of budget, because it's going to be 100 pages and quite a lot of pictures. And to create the project, we sort of wanted to have someone who would support it. And Sarah Baker's work has a certain aesthetic. It celebrates maybe women who have come from less privileged backgrounds, who become successful and celebrate their success through their clothing. And so Sarah, in her work, when she's performing her work, often wears brands such as Versace and a lot of jewelry. So we approached Versace about the book. And the meaning behind the book was that it was about the bitch. And
which is very Versace.
yeah, so we actually unpacked Dynasty and explored the character of Alexis and quite a lot of women in the 1980s and how they were kind of portrayed in popular culture, and established that if they were sort of powerful, they were often portrayed as this bitch, this ruthless woman who would have men at the disposal, who were a bit horrid and ruthless. And so we wanted to kind of subvert that within this story, and where the central characters would work together against patriarchy. And so we pitched it to Versace, and we were really hopeful about it. And at the time, actually, when we were pitching it, the Assassination of Versace had just come out, and in that TV program, Donatella is very shown as this kind of ruthless, bitchy woman who's very cold and powerful and would do anything to, control the Versace dynasty. And so we pitched it to Versace, and I guess, I don't know this, it wasn't ever discussed in making this assumption. I think they really liked it because they were aware of how that TV program had kind of marketed her as being this kind of bitch, and wanted to show Donatella in a kind of fun light, and that was it acceptable the way that she was kind of portrayed in this kind of TV adaptation. And so they loved it, and Donatella really wanted to work on it, and we worked with Allegra as well, Allegra Versace, on the book, and yeah, so that was a kind of Dynasty project.
Amazing.
Yes, that came to life. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like you've been able to do so much of bringing that thread into these physical objects. Do you feel like that has also manifested within you in any way since you've been around these projects?
So have I learned from the project?
Yeah, do you feel like it shifted you?
Absolutely. I think when I started, I'm not an academic. I don't have a PhD. Baron has definitely been quite ethnographic. And I've made projects and learned along the way about different communities, about my lines of investigation. So, and sometimes I think this is quite aligned with ethnography, that I'm kind of making the project, and I know what I want to make or an area to investigate. But at the end, when you kind of unpack it, that's when you kind of evaluate that kind of information, really learn from it, and maybe change your perspectives. Yes.
And do you feel like you're a little bit more Dynasty?
I mean, we're Dynasty. Do you know what? I've had to become less Dynasty recently because we're getting cancelled for having Elton John meltdowns, aren't we? So we have to be quite, a homogenous robot at the moment with no personality.
You enjoy a meltdown?
I do have them, yes.
But you do them in private spaces. I think I enjoy anger.
Yeah.
Quite a lot, but I use it as a fuel and for quite a lot of creative output. I prefer transmitting it in a way that's going to stun, confuse, and potentially break.
Right.
Yeah, rather than just completely letting it loose. I'm very pointed with it.
Right.
That's my interest.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't think I have meltdowns. I think I have rage.
Yes.
And then that kind of goes into getting what I might find amusing out of a situation more than anything. Okay. Yeah. So what character would that be?
So yes, it's sure. The Countess and Sound of Music. Yes.
Yeah, maybe yes. Yeah, with less musicality. But then, have you ever thought about the archetype of the dominatrix? Then,
so I have. We have made some. We made Namio Harukawa,
yes,
which was about Forniphilia. And so we did explore BDSM in the introduction to that book. We have made a book with Sadio Haskawa, which also explores kind of BDSM, but it's more in a queer context. And we have Romaine Slocombe coming out, which is about medical fetishism.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I find medical fetishism really interesting.
Yeah.
So do you know Romaine's work?
No.
So he photographs his subjects. So he wraps them in bandages and then photographs them. So his subjects are often...
I know I have seen this, yes.
Yeah, maybe in a full body wrap. And when you first see the images, because it's a man making the work, you think this is quite violent and misogynistic.
Okay.
And I would say that was my first reading of the work. But then when you kind of research it a bit more, the meaning behind it, so Romaine really enjoys how sensual it is. Like, you never see the subject's wounds. So he's wrapping the bandages, and bandages aren't, they're not sort of traditional latex. They're quite soft and supple. And wrapping it around his subject's arms and healing them is what he sort of gets aroused by it.
Yeah.
So I found that quite interesting.
Yeah, from what I remember, they're also quite loosely draped. It feels quite aesthetic as opposed to really encasing them, like mummifying them.
And you never see the wounds. And they are wearing makeup and look quite happy.
Yeah, it looks very aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, so his subjects want to be submissive, so they're subjects that he plays with. Yeah,
soft with him.
Yeah,
that's sweet.
Do you ever do medical?
Yeah, I would say that I live on the less nurturing side of it.
Okay.
If you couldn't tell with the rage comment. I enjoy the edge of fear.
Okay.
Yeah, and the coldness and the unknown of whether this is to help or to hinder.
Right.
And I think that medical can do that very well.
Right.
Yeah. But it also fits. I guess I have more room for that as a woman. Yeah. I mean, it can also, obviously, the edge of sadism is a difficult thing for a lot of people to accept. But I think I have a little bit more room, at least if I'm going to be public about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else are you familiar when it comes to medical fetish?
Medical fetish. Yeah, I'm not an expert about it. Yeah, so that was a project that I was quite interested in. We're doing another book with Fakir Mustafa, which is about body modification. So again, that sort of feels quite medical. Writing, researching that at the moment.
Okay.
So it's another project. But yeah, so that was the first really book that I've done about
And it's
medical.
mostly about wrapping and bandaging.
Yes.
So not about any insertion or...
No. Oh, we did do a project with Inside Flesh. Do you know them?
No,
They're
maybe
a collective in I think Poland, and they do a lot of insertions and blood transfusions. Yeah.
Nice. So many things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're interacting...
Do you do blood transfusions?
I have not done blood. Yeah. I mean, not in terms of, the only bags that I normally hang up are for enemas.
Right.
Enema play. But what was the impetus behind a blood transfusion for them?
For Inside Flesh. Yeah. It was a project that we published in the second issue. I have to confess, I can't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Why they were so interested in that?
Yeah, so we did do an interview with them, and I did it, and it was 10 years ago. Yeah. And that was a question. I can't remember what the meaning behind it was. But they are performance artists, and so they make films where they do transfusions and put needles in, and
And what does it look like?
It's very aesthetic, yes. Okay. You should check them out, yeah.
Yeah, I have never seen that. I mean, when you do because also I live in the real space as opposed to the documented space, right? And so it's very much about the emotion between rather than necessarily what it's going to look like documented. And so I guess I wonder what it comes. No one's ever asked me for a blood transfusion. Yeah, it's usually like very close inspection things.
Right.
Yeah, or and sure things that are done to them, but I guess that feels very subtle.
Yeah.
In a way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe if somebody likes a little bit of like an ignoring fetish also, yeah, then maybe I guess I could see how that would work. But I have not yet been asked that. But kink does seem to feature quite a lot in terms of what you are up to. Would you say that is a large component of it? How did that kind of feed into things?
So part of Baron is that I guess we're quite diverse with the projects and the work made. I wanted Baron to be kind of more fluid and liquid, and really the work to be the main focus. And so within Baron, we also have artists who are making conceptual projects, and maybe that's about feminism, and then at times we do explore kind of sexual subcultures, which could include like BDSM, sadomasochism. How do I pick and choose? A lot of research, actually. So Namio Harukawa, I really loved Namio's work for a long time, and it was very hard to find the work. And eventually we tracked down his family. He'd actually died during COVID, and they agreed that we could publish the first book after his death.
Okay.
So it's really a kind of mini book. But why do I choose?
Well, it's just like
so with Namio Harukawa, I was very interested in what he was depicting. So I think within visual culture, firstly, bigger women or fat women are not always portrayed in a very glamorous light. And in Namio's drawings, these bigger women always look very glamorous and are doing sporting pursuits and are extremely fashionable and aesthetic and have their hair done. And so that was one element that was very interested in it. And then I also really enjoyed, again, in popular culture, we often see a female subject maybe being powerless. So in Namio's drawings, there's scenes of Forniphilia, so he's sitting on the voluptuous ladies are sitting on Namio, and he's very small. Yes. So I thought that was quite interesting because we don't see that so much in visual culture.
I can't think of any other artists that people immediately think of. That's the work that you think of when you think of that scenario.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's such a widespread love.
Yeah.
That it's really unfortunate that it doesn't get more artistic representations. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole section of our kink sphere or BDSM sphere, or even not, that are obsessed with fat bodies, you know, and loving them. And there's something quite interesting in that when I was working as an escort in brothels.
Right.
There would usually only be one on staff, one big person. And the people who would always want to come and see them were the super buff young dudes.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, there's still such a huge gravitation to that, I guess that it just feels like human.
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
But then there's also a bit of control over that, isn't it?
Yeah,
that the sort of feeding as well and controlling their eating.
Yeah.
So I've seen their Twitter, actually. There seems to be quite a big scene within
feeders.
the maybe the bear community who are quite interested in feeding and
bear feeders
and becoming bigger.
Love.
And document that process of becoming even bigger.
Oh wow. Yeah. I always thought when it came to the muscly ones gravitating towards the bigger girls in the brothels, that it was maybe just this representation of what they weren't allowing themselves to be, or the flip side of it also. So there's so much that can be represented in our bodies. Is that the next project?
Do you know what I'm really interested. There's quite a few OnlyFans gay men who are making that work, and I do find it quite interesting, actually. Yes,
bears mostly.
Well, I would say they were chubs. They're chubs, and they play with their weight. Yeah, so they document the process of losing it and putting on the pounds, and eating.
Okay.
So
I've seen a lot of eating. I wish there were better directories around OnlyFans, because you have to know where you're going.
Yes.
You know, so you can't just browse.
Yes.
I would love to be able to select chubs in a feeding process currently. Yeah, has there been, I guess this started in 2013, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's been 11 years now.
It has, yes.
And it was a zine to an addition to now research. It sounds like you're researching a lot
of
things behind it.
So we generally speaking, all our books have an essay contextualizing the work and why we're interested in trying to find meaning behind it.
Okay. Yeah. And do you see a shift in medium happening at all, or you think books are where it houses what you're looking for?
Yeah, so I think some of our books are becoming a bit more digital, so you can often use your phone to scan it and see a video maybe.
Okay.
We've done that quite a lot. We did it with Yushi Lee last year with her book. She had several films that you could scan and watch, which I thought was quite nice. So so books I think are combining new media in them too,
And the sex shop next?
I'm not going to do a sex shop, actually. I thought about it. I did try about 5 years ago to do more of a sex shop, and it really wasn't that successful.
What did you try?
So I had a lot of latex wear, and we had lingerie, and we were going to move into sex toys. And then we had the books and the magazines as well. And the clothing just really actually...
Didn't move.
No, it didn't. It was quite difficult. I think with latex, they were quite expensive pieces, and it's online. So I think maybe...
Oh, it was online?
Yeah, the website was online. So I think people really wanted to maybe try that on.
Yeah, latex could be like this.
Yeah. So maybe it wasn't that well thought through on my part.
It's an experiment, I guess.
Yeah.
It sounds like everything's been a very successful experiment.
I mean, some of it has been a total flop. I mean, that was a total flop.
But in a holistic way.
We were talking before we started filming that I've done some sort of symposiums and talks, and those sometimes can be...
Sometimes work, sometimes don't.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I guess people can be fickle with their attentions and their commitments.
Yes.
Yeah. But what you've noticed is that they like an old sex shop.
Yes, they love that. Yes, we've done, I think, about 5 launches in sex shops, and it always has a great turnout.
Yeah.
People are really invested in going down and have a fun time. Love looking at the magazines that are there and the sex toys. And it's a bit like a sort of Ann Summers party.
Do you have any favorite stores?
Do I have it? Do you know what? They've all closed down. So we used to do quite a lot across the road from Walker's Court. There was a really beautiful sex shop. It had like a chain. You had to walk through chains to get through it.
Okay.
It was amazing. I can't remember its names. It was Soho Books, I think it was called. Yeah.
Okay.
That was amazing. Yeah.
They didn't only sell books.
No, they had dildos and everything, yes. But most of them are closed down. There's the Great British Sex Shop. I mean, I like the environment. Do you like them?
Yes, but I can't say that I can buy much from most of them.
No.
Yeah. I'm definitely living in the BDSM sphere of things. And so for me, it's pretty quick in terms of how quickly you can see how badly things are made. Yeah. And so I only really go to Regulation in London, but I do love that it's there. I still get wide-eyed in Candy Shop when I go in there. And then there's another big one called Purple Passion in New York that I like.
Right.
That's a bit more commercial looking, but they have some really great little implements that they buy individually from small producers.
Right.
Yeah, they really take the time for that. And you can see it's just, you're going to go in and find something
Right.
like a heart-shaped meat cleaver,
Yeah.
you know, that you can't get somewhere else.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it still has a use and a place and a fun element, but I guess it's hard having physical space.
It is, yeah, it's very challenging. Do you know Claire Durand Books?
Oh, no.
It's a book shop in London. So the owner of that, Lucy, they do a lot of book signings. It's actually, it used to be on Charing Cross Road now. But anyway, the previous owner of that, Lucy, she's going to be setting up a sex shop, and it's going to be a contemporary sex shop and have a physical space and maybe rethink what the sex shop should be. So that sounds quite exciting.
How far along are in that are they?
I saw her party recently and she told me about it, and I thought it sounded really fun, and she's really interesting and smart, and hopefully she'll find a kind of new perspective for it. Yeah.
If she wants to connect,
yeah,
pick my brain.
I think we have the sort of burlesque sex shops, don't we? And then we have, you know, the sort of sleazy Soho ones that are run by maybe old men. And then, but it would be nice to have something that's a bit more like contemporary, and maybe the environment of Dover Street, where you can go in and have a nice coffee, get amazing books.
I think it needs to be a hybrid space. For sure.
Make it just a bit more accessible.
I look forward to having another place to dip into.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, is there anything else you'd like to share? Anything else that's sort of brought up?
So, I think that's it. We've got our Romaine book. I'll send you a copy coming out quite soon. That's really fun.
That's the one.
Yes, and we've got an amazing essay that I think you'd enjoy reading, which kind of explores medical fetishism and the film crash, and also maybe our desires to look at death and injury, and has some really interesting sources from like Susan Sontag exploring that. So I think you'd like that.
Exciting. Nice to know that you're excited on that one. But also, I guess that reminds me, there is a series that is solely dedicated to death amongst your...
We have the Death Book, yes.
Death Book.
Yes.
When did that come about?
So we started that about 5 years ago, in 2018. We did a first edition of that. And I thought it was quite a nice natural progression. Sex and death are so intertwined.
Tell me why you think that?
Well, I think that it actually is a very personal thing. I talked about it a little bit earlier, that growing up as a gay man, my sexuality, when it was discussed in the media, it was always about kind of dying. And so I was very interested in that. And I think that really kind of shaped my kind of position and world vision growing up. And as a result of that, I've always been quite attracted to kind of death and chaos, and questioned my own mortality. So I felt a very kind of natural progression to kind of go into that. What do you think death and sex are connected?
If I think internally, I think that, I mean, they call it the little death, don't they?
Yeah.
The orgasm.
Yeah.
I think
exactly. We actually, yes. Yeah. We have a bit of an essay in our third issue where we talk about the little death. Yeah.
I think that there is a similarity on an internal level for me in that there is a letting go.
Right.
That can happen within both.
Yes.
And I think a letting go into viscerality.
Right.
Yeah. But I think that in terms of linking it amongst conversation, common culture between us, I think it's maybe more that it's things that are such a large component of our lives, but that we shy away from because of the potential weight of them.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think maybe they're linked in that way, and there's maybe a little bit of an experiential link, but I'm not sure if I automatically think that they're the same.
Right.
They're in the same section.
Well, so our first issue really looked at how death in visual culture is a simulation. We don't know what it looks like, and it's often being used to control people and condemn people through making imagery about death and what could happen to you. And so we found that quite interesting. But I think in a lot of popular culture, we see death. I think, we live in a very misogynistic society. We often see maybe female subjects in fashion shoots that often look like dead bodies.
Close to death.
Yes.
Yeah.
And very objectified.
Yeah, I guess it's a utility like sexuality is also. So, but then I guess it makes me think, what is it about sex, or what is it about death that people are using these facets to control? And is it because they are powerful things? They move us and how we think and how we even operate.
Yeah.
So I guess, for that reason, maybe there is grand similarity.
Yes.
But so when you do these death book projects, is there a thread that needs to happen?
So it's quite open, actually. So the second issue of it was by Bruce LeBruce, and so we worked with Bruce, and it was made during COVID, and we explored his archive and found images that maybe were quite gore or featured a lot of horror. And explored death in the kind of process. A lot of his images are kind of documentations of actions and performances that use blood and the body.
A lot to choose from.
Yeah, so that was really nice working with him on that, and it was especially sort of gloomy as it was COVID, and we were having to work digitally together to create that book. And then the other book was Toshiya Saki. He's a Japanese illustrator who often uses death as a kind of way. I think he makes quite shocking imagery, and so does Bruce. And often to shock people, I think, makes people question the work, which can then lead people to maybe interesting ideas or meanings or questions about society. And Toshiya Saki, I think, definitely does that in his work. He's quite important because in his work he kind of questioned Japanese conservatism, makes quite sexually explicit work that features gore and blood and masturbation, and it really was to kind of shock this kind of conservative Japanese culture and question it. And that was the kind of meaning behind his work. So that was an interesting project to see how we quite often see the body being used in work, maybe to be shocking, or sex, and how death could be used in work to be shocking and get people to sort of respond to it through shocking them and questioning why this work is made.
Yeah, capturing them, and then we can see what we'll do with that almost later.
Yes.
Is there a project that you have found it hard to do, or that you would like to do?
Do you know, we've had so many projects that have been a nightmare. I think some projects haven't actually happened. Yeah. There's been quite a few of those. Yeah.
So it's more administrative issues rather than...
Well, we had one project, I don't know if I should say their name.
No, don't say their name.
But we could be a bit scandalous.
You can say their name if you wish. I leave it to you.
I can't remember if our confidential agreement still, I think it's finished, so I can't talk about it. I'm not going to talk. I'll summarize the project. So it was a particular artist who is also a fashion photographer, and they were making a project where they were transforming themselves into different characters. And the initial project started off that she wanted to explore a project about how beauty makeup was maybe once a tool for men to objectify women, and how women could use that maybe to emancipate themselves through creating businesses or looking more powerful through transforming themselves. So the project initially started off about that, and then I kind of don't know what happened with the project. It sort of that got lost, and then it really became a kind of reinterpretation of maybe Cindy Sherman's. She dresses up and she's sort of mocking the male gaze within her kind of transformations. And so it became this project that looked a bit like Cindy Sherman, but this particular artist was dressing up as shop workers. And in that process of doing it, she sent me a mood board and what she was using a prosthetic makeup artist to create these different characters. And she had created all these characters who were shop workers, and they were caricatures, they had warts on their faces. And I was like, I think this project's going to be a bit problematic. Firstly, why, the project was about this, about how you could use beauty, and that now it's changed into these shop workers who have got warts on their face, and they're all caricatures. And I found the project really problematic, and we kind of fell out, and it never happened. And she didn't want to listen about it. And interesting enough, she did release the project with another publisher. And I was quite happy. She actually, not many people picked up on what I had criticised the project with, but it did have one review. She did an exhibition of it that really kind of, slated it and said, this is,
like you mentioned.
You've depicted working class people as kind of being caricatures. Like, what is this project about? And it didn't. She's not really a conceptual artist, so her work doesn't really have any meaning.
Okay.
So that was a problematic project that didn't come out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like more administrative rather than not emotionally.
It was a battle because I found the work problematic. I didn't want to bring it out. I'm really fine if she was making that project and she wanted to shock everyone. And it was maybe
and there was a commentary about it.
It was about classism. That would be totally fine. But because it had absolutely no meaning, and she just, it was just about aesthetics.
So it didn't have a home.
So we fell out about that,
It happens.
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing that it doesn't happen more often.
Yeah.
When you're working with art and how people are channeling themselves.
What other difficult publication books have we done? I can't think. Bruce has always been quite challenging again because it's the death book was quite challenging because a lot of printers wouldn't print it.
Oh.
Yeah. They wouldn't work on it because it was so gruesome.
Even though they would never be tagged or credited anywhere.
Yeah, they just morally wouldn't work on it. We had about 5 or 6 printers pull out on that. So all of the criticism was that it's quite gruesome. So I did take that book to a lawyer, and that was really interesting to find about the Obscenity Act, and to explore what maybe you're allowed to do within arts and culture. So in arts and culture, in the Obscenity Act, there is a law saying that if you are making the work and you want to show a wound or blood and it has meaning and would educate the viewer, you are allowed to do it. So,
But if not, then...
You go to prison,
or you have to go to court and figure that out. But I mean, it's just some slightly outdated thing. Like, for example, in Singapore, they have I don't think they call it obscenity, but it's
obscene publications is what we would
having problems with it. Vulgarity is the word that they use.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's just a very loose thing that if they feel like getting you, they can probably argue it. Yeah, so...
We actually worked with Mike Diana. Do you know his work?
No.
He's an American artist, and he actually went to prison for his illustrations. We created featured him in the death book and created an power range with him, but he did a zine called Boiled Angels, and it was quite gruesome. And he was sentenced in the like 1990s in the US.
In the US,
I think he's the only living American artist to ever be sentenced for obscenity.
And how long was he there for? Is he out?
I like it. Yeah, there's a really great documentary about it. You should.
I should have a look.
You should have a look, and he's quite cute too.
Good to watch.
He's in the Bruce book actually.
Oh,
there's a nude of him in there.
Okay, I'll have a look. There's lots of pretty things in there, though. But thank you so much for joining us.
No,
it sounds
it's been
like
my
such
pleasure.
an incredible width and breadth of things that you've brought to us, and I'm very grateful for all the goodness.
Thanks.
And for
It's been an
shared.
honor to be invited. I've been watching and listening to your podcast and enjoying them.
Thank you. But thank you for the Baron Prize, for connecting that way.
Yes, it was great to connect that way.
And for letting your Mona Lisa and Dynasty carry you into your curiosities as it has. It's wonderful for all of us to have experienced.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening. Speak to you next time.